Buen Camino, everyone. I'm Nadine from Nadine Walks, and I'm here to talk about tips for the Camino de Santiago. About a year ago, or earlier this year, or 2 years ago, can't remember how long, but I recorded a video called 10 Less Talked About Tips for the Camino. And at the time, I had really wanted to try to come up with some tips and information that you might not be hearing about anywhere else or that weren't quite as common. And I wanted to continue with that here today and to talk about 5 more tips that are just things that I've learned along the way over the course of a number of years and things that you might not have read about or learned about in your guidebook. So hopefully some of these tips will be helpful. As ever, just share in the comments with your own experience or your own tips. That'll be helpful for everyone. Okay, jumping in, tip number 1. Take photos of the more real moments along the way. So when we're on an adventure, a trip, when we're traveling, especially on the Camino, we tend to really try to photograph the highlights. We're taking photos of the beautiful landscapes, of the towns and villages we pass through, the architecture, the people that you're meeting, the food that you're eating. And that's the bulk of my photographs too. But sometime during my first Camino, a good friend that I met and walked with for a week or two, she kind of said, "Hey Nadine, one day, right at the end of our walking day, when we arrive in our town, when we're waiting to check into the albergue, we should take photos of ourselves with how we look in the moment." And I thought it was a hilarious idea because I think that particular day, it was hot, we were tired, I was sweaty, the line to the albergue was long, but I snapped a selfie of myself. And I'll include it here, not the most flattering image, but it's one that really makes me smile and laugh. And I'm so glad I have that photo. And I've done that a few other times on some other walks, just taking a photo of myself or like a situation that just wasn't ideal, but was absolutely part of the experience. And I think having kind of the document of some of those moments as well is really important, because for something like the Camino, there are so many wonderful, beautiful moments, but it's also a long walk and not all parts are fun. And I really like being able to record kind of the fuller picture of it. So that is my tip for you, to remember to take photos of some of the more mundane stuff, or just those moments when you're tired or you're frustrated or you've got blisters or you're in pain, because hopefully you will look back one day and really smile and be so glad that you have that photo. Tip number 2, and that is to bring extra ZIPLOC bags. So this is something that my mom gave me this piece of advice years and years ago, I think before I first started traveling. She has always said, bring extra ZIPLOC bags. You never know when you're gonna need them. And that has proven to be true. I think especially for something like the Camino, there are so many uses for having extra bags, extra ZIPLOC bags on you. I have used them for anything from storing food and snacks along the way to using as another container for my soap. So I always kind of put my soap in a ZIPLOC bag. But if I'm on a longer walk or walking for a month, often that initial bag gets, full of soap scum and it's wet. And once one of the bags developed a hole and it made a mess in my pack. So having an extra ZIPLOC comes in handy quite a bit for that. I've used it to pack up damp clothing. So if I washed my clothes the day before and they didn't dry overnight, and that next day it was raining or wet out, I didn't want to pin the clothes on the back of my pack to dry, as I walked. I had to just keep them in my pack. And I think one year I didn't have anything to put them in, and I just kind of had it in with my stuff, and it's just not the most appealing thing. So having a big extra ZIPLOC bag to put my things in came in handy. I've used it, when I do coastal walks and I might be picking up a few seashells or sea glass. It's great to have another bag to put that stuff in, little trinkets along the way. So bring a few extra bags with you. They are super lightweight, easy to just slide into a compartment. Even if you don't use them, it's really not going to add that much weight, but you'll probably be glad that you have them. Okay, the 3rd tip. So this one is kind of a 2-parter. The first part of this is, if you're eating, say, a pilgrim's meal or menu del dia and it's just too much food and you can't finish it all, you can ask for leftovers to take back with you. Now, this isn't going to work in every situation, because sometimes you're not going to be staying in an albergue or a hotel or a room that has a fridge or a kitchen. And so you won't have anywhere to store the leftovers. And especially if you had an evening meal, you're gonna wanna probably put them in a fridge overnight. But if you are staying in a place that has a fridge and you've ordered too much food, or certainly a pilgrim's menu came with too much, you can absolutely ask to take those leftovers back with you. I think it's becoming more common in Spain to do this. They might charge just a little bit for a container to take them in, but you absolutely can ask to take the rest of your food with you. And this is kind of nice. One, it's, you're not wasting food, and it's also a way to save money. It's not something that I've done a lot. I've only done it a couple times, but I think it's something that I want to try to do more on my upcoming Camino, because there are, definitely sometimes when I eat all my food or just about all of it, but then there are other times when it's just the meal is simply too much and I just feel kind of badly that I'm leaving a lot of food on my plate. So I'm going to try to ask to take leftovers with me. And sometimes having an extra ZIPLOC bag will come in handy to store them. So the other part of this tip though is that let's say you have an evening meal, take the leftovers with you. The next day you want to kind of eat them for lunch. The tip, and this is something I read on a Camino forum, I can't remember who wrote it, so I can't give this person credit, but they suggested buying a pack of flour tortillas and then just dumping the leftovers in the tortilla and rolling it up and eating it like a wrap. And I think that's a really easy, kind of clean, non-messy way to eat your leftovers and could just make for a fun lunch. I, again, haven't done that with leftovers, but I almost always now on my Caminos at some point will buy a pack of flour tortillas, and I just love having them to make lunches out of. I just always buy like some cheese and meat and make some wraps for lunch. I think it's really nice because the tortillas will stay fresh and you can have them, like one pack will last for multiple lunches or meals. But I really like the idea of trying that with leftovers. And I think especially some meals, like a pilgrim's menu that comes with a basic salad and some meat, if you've got any extra of that, that would make a great wrap. So asking for your leftovers and then turning it into a wrap to eat the next day for a picnic lunch is tip number 3. Tip number 4, and this one is keep a note of all the names of people that you meet along the way. And so I think this is something that you could do whether by hand, like in a little notebook. I always bring a tiny notebook like this on my Caminos, perfect to jot down stuff like people's names, or it could be a note in your phone. I've done that too. But you're meeting so many people along the way, and I like to think that I'm going to be able to remember everyone's name, but so often I don't. And then I run into them again and I can't remember their name. I either have to ask and that's fine to do. But in the last several years, I've started just in one place collecting all the names when I can remember to do it. I'll meet someone, then later that day I just jot down their name while I can remember. And it's just nice to have that to refer back to. It's also really nice after a Camino that I just have this spot where I just really have a collection of all the names of the people that I've met on my walk. And some of those people really do become my friends, or I have a special connection with them. And it's just a really nice kind of memory from my Caminos. So keep a note of names of people that you meet. Tip number 5 is to use WhatsApp on your Camino. Now, WhatsApp is a free messaging and voice calling app. A lot of you watching this video have already used it. You've been using it for years, so this tip might not apply to you as much. But I think for pilgrims in the United States, especially, we don't really use WhatsApp here, and it wasn't something that I learned of until I was on my first Camino, and it was something I just kind of wish I had known going in. So again, WhatsApp is free. It is like a messaging app that is so widely used across Europe, across other parts of the world, and it is going to be the way that most people keep in touch with each other on the Camino. So you'll meet someone, you put their number into WhatsApp, and you essentially can text along the way. It works on Wi-Fi, so that makes it really easy, and it's just really convenient. So I would say it's something that you should put on your phone, make sure you have it, kind of play around with it a little bit just to be familiar with how it works. And then you'll find that you're going to use it on the Camino, I almost guarantee you. And in addition to keeping in touch with people I meet on the way, in the last couple of years, I've started using WhatsApp to occasionally make reservations in albergues. So if I am going to be trying to reserve a bed, and if I'm on a more popular route, especially like the Camino Francés or the Portuguese, most places in albergues are connected to WhatsApp and they use it. So I'll just send off a message. I send it in Spanish, but I just use like a Google Translate to make sure what I'm saying makes sense. I'll just type out the message, ask if there's a bed available. And so often a person will get back to me fairly quickly. And for me, who I really can't speak Spanish, and I can manage to communicate on the phone in Spanish, but it is a little stressful and sometimes difficult. I have found that WhatsApp and just sending a message is a much, much easier way to make reservations. And sometimes it can be more convenient because someone will get back to you pretty quickly, but you don't have to constantly try to call to get in touch with someone or send an email and have to wait several days. WhatsApp can be very convenient. So put WhatsApp on your phone, test it out, use it along the way. All right, those are my 5 kind of less talked about tips for walking the Camino de Santiago. Again, please feel free to chime in with any of your tips or what you think about these, and I'll be back soon with more. Buen Camino.